I came home to find my privacy hedges butchered and a $750 fine on my door. But the Willow Creek HOA had no idea they had just messed with their new financial auditor. How would they react when they discovered I had access to 5 years of their suspicious financial records? Comment below where you're watching from. Blood rushed to my face as I stared at the stumps of what used to be my beautiful privacy hedges. 6 years of careful growing and weekly trimming, destroyed in hours while I was at work. My fingers trembled as I picked up the yellow paper stuck to my front door. Vegetation violation corrected. $750 landscaping fee applied to your account. Willow Creek HO. I grabbed my measuring tape from the garage and checked the height of the mangled remains. Exactly 3 feet tall. Now the HOA rules clearly stated hedges could be up to 7 feet. Mine had been 6.5 feet. I measured them every single Saturday during my morning trimming routine. Someone had trespassed on my property and destroyed my privacy barrier for no reason. Through the new gaps, I could see Diane Reynolds from across the street watching me with a smirk while pretending to water her roses. She'd complained about my hedges blocking her view multiple times at neighborhood meetings. I marched inside and dialed the HOA office, my heart hammering against my ribs. Willow Creek Gardens HOA, this is Margaret speaking. Margaret. This is Jackson Taylor from 243 Magnolia Drive. I just got home to find my hedges butchered and a $750 fine on my door. I want to know who authorized this and why. One moment, Mr. Taylor. I heard typing on a keyboard. Yes, we received several complaints about visibility issues with your hedges. The board voted on it last Thursday. Didn't you read the community email? What email? I never received any notice. And my hedges were within regulation height. I measure them weekly. Margaret's voice turned cold. The board determined they exceeded height restrictions and blocked sightlines at the corner. The decision was unanimous. That's impossible. I want to speak to Karen Wilson right now. The board president is unavailable. You can file a formal appeal, but the landscaping fee stands. The work has already been done. I hung up and paced my living room, running my hands through my hair. This wasn't just unfair, it was illegal. They couldn't enter my property without proper notice. I grabbed my camera and went outside to document the damage. As I photographed the destroyed hedges, a sleek black SUV slowed in front of my house. Karen Wilson, HO board president, rolled down her window. Her perfect blonde bob didn't move as she tilted her head. Landscaping looks much better now, Jackson. The whole neighborhood thanks you for finally complying with regulations. I was already in compliance, Karen. You know that. This was trespassing and destruction of property. Karen's smile didn't reach her eyes. The board has authority to remedy violations after proper notification. Check your email next time. She started to roll up her window. You targeted me specifically. I called out. Just like you did to the Montgomerys last month with their fence. Her window stopped halfway. Be careful with accusations, Jackson. This community runs on rules and respect. Some people just have trouble with both. The SUV pulled away, leaving me seething on my lawn. My phone buzzed with an email notification. I opened it to find a job confirmation for next Monday. My new position as the financial auditor for Willow Creek Gardens HOA. The board had just approved my hiring last week, but the paperwork wouldn't reach Karen until tomorrow. They had no idea I'd been given full access to their accounts, spending records and decision logs for the past 5 years. I smiled for the first time since coming home. Karen Wilson thought she had all the power. But she had just handed me the keys to her kingdom. I walked back inside and opened my laptop, creating a fresh folder labeled HOA Audit Special Focus. That night I could barely sleep. Through my now exposed bedroom window, I noticed unusual activity at Karen's house. Board members arriving for an unscheduled meeting. Thomas Garcia, the only board member who ever voted against Karen, parked across the street. He looked troubled as he checked his watch and hurried inside. I grabbed my phone and set a reminder to speak with Thomas tomorrow. If Karen was calling emergency meetings, Something bigger than my hedges was happening in Willow Creek Gardens. Normally, only a handful of residents attended, but word had clearly spread about tonight's emergency session. I grabbed my laptop bag and ran through the downpour, nearly colliding with Diane at the entrance. Her usual smug smile vanished when she saw me. "You're not welcome here," she hissed, blocking the doorway. "This meeting is for discussing board matters." I held up the meeting notice. "This says all homeowners are invited to attend. Last I checked, I still own my home, even with shorter hedges." Inside, the room hummed with whispered conversations that stopped when I entered. Residents filled every folding chair, with more standing along the walls. Many nodded at me or gave small waves. Thomas sat at the board table, looking uncomfortable beside Karen, who was arranging papers with sharp, angry movements. I took the last empty seat in the front row and connected my laptop to the projector cable. Karen watched me with narrowed eyes. At exactly 7 o'clock, she tapped the microphone, her diamond rings catching the fluorescent light. Her smile looked painted on, not reaching her eyes. "Welcome, everyone. Before we begin official business, I'd like to address a serious situation regarding our new financial auditor, Jackson Taylor." She pointed at me without looking my way. "Mr. Taylor has been making unfounded accusations and misusing his position to pursue a personal grudge after receiving a standard violation notice." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen continued, her voice hardening. "The board will be voting tonight to terminate his contract immediately to protect our community's financial security." I stood up, projector remote in hand. "Actually, Karen, I'd like to present my preliminary audit findings to the community directly." Her smile vanished. "This isn't on the agenda, Mr. Taylor. Sit down or I'll have you removed." I held up the HOA bylaws booklet. Article 7, Section 3 states any resident may present relevant financial information at public meetings. And trust me, what I found is very relevant to everyone here. "He's right," Thomas interjected. "The bylaws allow this." Karen's fingers tightened around the microphone. "Fine. 5 minutes, Mr. Taylor." "Thank you." I pressed the remote and my first slide appeared. A photo of my butchered hedges. "Many of you know what happened to my property last week. What you don't know is why." I clicked to the next slide. A screenshot of emails between Karen and Margaret. This is an email where Karen specifically ordered action against my property, despite compliance reports showing my hedges were within the 6.5-foot height regulation. Karen lunged for the projector cord. "These are private communications. You have no right." Actually, as HOA auditor, I have every right to review all communications related to enforcement actions. I moved to block her from the equipment, and homeowners have the right to know when rules are being applied unfairly. The next slide showed a breakdown of landscaping expenses over 3 years. Elite Green Solutions has received over $500,000 from our HOA fees since 2021. Their rates are triple the market average. Can anyone guess who owns Elite Green Solutions? "This is slander," Karen shouted. "It's public record," I replied calmly, showing business registration documents. Elite Green Solutions is owned by Matthew Wilson, Karen's brother-in-law. Every time they cut someone's shrubs or remove a tree, your HOA fees fund Karen's family. Gasps echoed through the room. An elderly man in the back stood up. "They charged me $900 to trim one oak tree last spring. Said it was an emergency hazard removal." I nodded. "They charged the HOA $1,200 for that service. The going rate from other companies would be about $350. More residents began sharing similar stories. I let them talk for a minute before continuing. "But it gets worse." I clicked to a neighborhood map with red and green dots marking houses. Green dots show properties belonging to board members and their friends. Red dots show everyone else. Notice anything about violation enforcement patterns. The contrast was stark. Clusters of green dots had no violations, while red dots were covered with multiple citations. I reviewed 3 years of violation records. If you're friends with board members, your violations magically disappear. If you've ever questioned the board, like I did at last month's meeting about rising fees, you suddenly get hit with multiple violations. Karen's face had turned scarlet. "These are baseless accusations. The board has always acted in the community's best interest." From the front row, an unexpected ally emerged. Mrs. Jenkins, who rarely spoke at meetings, stood up shakily with her cane. Then explain why you find me for my rose bushes being too tall, but Diane's illegal swimming pool addition never received a citation. Diane gasped. My pool is fully approved. Mrs. Jenkins held up papers. Not according to the county permit office. I checked. More residents started speaking up. They fined me $500 for parking my work van overnight. Once. They made me repaint my whole house because the shade of blue was too bright. I got cited for a basketball hoop that's been there for 5 years. I returned to my presentation. The most concerning finding is this. I displayed a graph showing the HOA reserve fund declining sharply. Our community's emergency reserves have shrunk by 40% in 2 years, with no major improvements to justify the expense. Karen tried to regain control, grabbing the microphone. This meeting is adjourned. We will address these fabricated concerns at a later date, after proper review. Thomas stood up, his quiet voice somehow cutting through the chaos. Point of order. The meeting cannot be adjourned without a vote. He reached for the gavel Karen was clutching. Motion to continue the meeting and vote for an independent forensic audit of all HOA finances for the past 5 years. Second, called voices from around the room. This is ridiculous. Karen snapped. You can't just. All in favor? Thomas asked. Hands shot up throughout the room. Nearly every resident was voting yes. Motion passed, Thomas declared. The board will arrange for an independent auditor, not Mr. Taylor, to avoid any conflict of interest, to conduct a complete forensic audit. Karen flung the gavel onto the table with a crack. You'll regret this, she snarled at me as she gathered her designer purse. All of you will regret this. I've given 15 years to this community. No, Karen, I replied quietly so only she could hear. You've taken from this community for 15 years. There's a difference. As she stormed toward the exit, she jabbed a manicured finger at my chest. You've made a terrible mistake, Jackson. This is my neighborhood. I built it, and I can tear you down just as easily as those stupid hedges. I watched her leave, then turned back to find Thomas organizing residents into action committees. The elderly Mrs. Jenkins patted my arm. Young man, I've lived here since before the HOA existed. What you did tonight took guts. I smiled at her. Sometimes you have to stand your ground. Well, you certainly did that, she said, pointing to Karen's abandoned gavel on the table. And it looks like the balance of power just shifted.